is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 41 of the So Free Art podcast, which is a little podcast I do each week about art and things. And this one is going to be about stuff. And this one's going to be about a few things, because I took the last couple of weeks off, so I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about the main things I'm going to talk about is podcasting, restructuring the process of how you go about doing things, and loneliness. Because this time of year, loneliness seems to become quite a big thing for a lot of people, including myself. So that's this week's main topics. We've got the book, which is a book I haven't finished yet. I'm on chapter 7, and it is called Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. So that's the book, and then we have the little art tip of the week, which this week is going to be a very little one about the benefits of drawing before bed. So that's this week's podcast. I thought I would start. That's this week's podcast. You can find show notes and stuff at sophielawson.com. And I thought I would start. I didn't intend to take some time off, but I got hit by this thing of feeling like I needed a break. So actually, instead of doing the podcast, I went up to Saltram, which is the local woods, and I just sat with my tree friend, which I hadn't done that for quite a long time. It'd been a few months since I had done that, and I felt like I needed it, and that was really nice. And then the next week I didn't do a podcast because with Christmas there's a lot of stuff, and then I didn't do a podcast the next week either, and I wasn't going to do one this week, but I thought I've got to. But this is what I'm going through right now, where I'm talking, is part of the issue I have with podcasting. So I'm tempted to leave all of this in, because what it is the reason I've got to change the way I do the podcast, and I've been thinking about it. So when I took that time off, I've been thinking about how can I, because what I want to do is I want to focus on studying, because studying is key, and I know how far away I am from where I want to be with drawing characters from my imagination. It's such a completely different skill set to drawing realistic drawings, and I know it's going to take quite a long time, so I really want to focus on studying and doing the podcast. It's one of the most fun things I do. I love doing the podcast, and it's weird because the last few days I've been having withdrawal symptoms from not doing the podcast. So I really love doing the podcast. But the thing is, it takes me... Well, I've worked it out, because what I did was I started timing how long it was taking me to put a podcast together, and it actually worked out about 8 hours. So it's an hour to record it. The actual thing of recording the podcast isn't that hard. It's all the editing and stuff that's taking me a lot of time. So because I want to focus on my studying, and 8 hours a week to do the podcast is a large amount of time, and I can't keep doing that for the rest of the next year. So I have to change something, and I've thought, do I change it and make the podcast monthly, or maybe once every 2 weeks? Do I do that, or do I keep it the other option? Because the only reason it takes so long to edit is because the way I talk, sometimes I stumble over my words and stuff, and I have that thing of wanting to be perfectionism, I guess. So I'm constantly, well, not constantly, but I've gotten a lot better, but a lot of the time I'm repeating things if I don't say it the way I want to. And what I want to do, there's two ways I can go here. I can either keep editing the podcast the way I am and only put the podcast out once a month or something, or I can say to myself, I'm going to start recording podcasts and not doing any editing. And the thing is, when I started the first episode, see, like, what happened just there with my voice, I probably would have resaid that phrase because my voice broke up. And during the first couple of weeks, the first couple of months of this podcast, the first 10 episodes or something, I was always editing. It took me ages to edit because I was a lot more nervous then. So I have got better, but during the podcasts, my voice does play up a bit, and I think it's because I put a bit of pressure on it. So I know that if I could just relax, my voice will be alright, like as good as it can be. So I feel like if I just say, right, I'm going to start doing these podcasts and not doing any editing, that's going to be, I think it might have the benefit of actually allowing me to loosen up and relax, because it's like, well, if I mess up, it's tough. And in a weird way, I think that will be a positive thing. So I really want to do that, and I'm going to try and make this one be the first one. So I'm going to try and have this one not have any editing in it, and I'll see how that goes. So, and if I can do that, I can keep the podcast. I'd either do once every 2 weeks moving forward, or maybe I can keep it as once a week. I'm going to see how it goes, because I really want to put all my time into studying, and I want to do like YouTube videos and stuff. I've got so many ideas for YouTube videos, and I've also timed how long it takes to do videos, and strangely it only takes about an hour to do like a 10 to 20 minute video. So like I could do so many more videos, and I feel like videos are more, you can do more things with videos because obviously it's visual as well. And so there's part of me that wants to sort of, well, I did actually think, do I just stop the podcast for the next year or so and focus on videos? Because I can study, and while I'm studying I can do the videos. And the good thing about this is, when you're doing the videos talking about what you're studying, you're also learning. And the same thing happens with this podcast. When I'm talking about things on the podcast, I'm also learning. And that's why I love doing these podcasts and videos and stuff. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm trying to work out, because at this time of year I always look back at the year and see what I've done, what's worked, what hasn't, and I look to what I want to do next year. And the main thing I want to do next year is have a year of like studying, but I also know that there has to be balance, because if I go all in on the studying, I'm going to end up burning myself out. So there has to be a balance. And this is another thing, if I'm doing the podcast at 8 hours a week, like the things I would cut out are like going to Saltram, which that is good for me, because when I'm at Saltram I just do nothing, and like sometimes you need to do nothing. So I want to have a system next year where I can do everything but also have moments where I do nothing to get that balance. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm trying to work out how to do it. And what I've also noticed is, if you talk about what you're thinking about, it makes it real, and instead of it being in your head, when you start talking about it, it somehow makes it easier to do it. So like the fact I'm saying now that I'm going to try and not edit this podcast, I've sort of made, what do they call it? They call that something. It's accountability. It's like you're making yourself accountable for it. And that's one of the good things about art challenges like Inktober and stuff. When you say you're going to do it, it sort of keeps you focused to do it. So that's where I'm at the moment with the podcast. But I will say, if you're thinking about doing a podcast, I really do think it's the best thing you could ever do, because you'll be amazed. It's very easy to do, but it's easy to do because all you need is just a little microphone, and it's so easy to stick it up onto the website and stuff. The hard bit is like editing. So if you can be one of these people who doesn't care about like things being perfect, it would be so much easier for you. And I think that might be one of the main things I have to learn is to let go of like trying to make things perfect, I feel like that's maybe what the thing of podcasting is for me, because I feel like everything that comes into your life is teaching you things, and it's like when you look back at it, you realise, wow, that thing there taught me stuff. It's like lucid dreaming is teaching me about fears. Oh, that's something else. At the end of this podcast, I'm going to talk about a tiny thing that happened last week when I had my third session of Reiki healing. It was really weird, and I'll talk about that at the end. But I've lost my train of thought now. Lucid dreaming is about fears, and when you look back at everything that's come into your life, you can actually see that it's all teaching you things. So I feel like the main thing about podcasting for me is teaching me that I can accept my voice the way it is, but that I have to. The part of accepting it means that I have to accept its limitations as well. So that's where I'm at. And if next year I can do the podcast without editing them, that would just be like such a massive breakthrough for me, because, like I say, I just feel like that could have so many benefits in the future. Like doing videos, it would relax me on the videos, and that's something I've noticed, is it's much easier for me to do videos now because of all this time I've spent doing podcasts. And so let's say in like 20 years time you wanted to be, say, running an art class where you're talking in front of people. Again, I feel like years of doing videos and podcasts, it's going to make it much easier to talk in front of people. So like I feel like all these things are like, everything leads into everything else. There's no way that I could go in front of people and talk like a year ago, but now it seems kind of possible because of the podcast. So this is why I know that I have to keep doing the podcast. I just love this podcast, and I have quite a few people messaging me saying nice things, which does help, but I don't know whether this sounds right, but I'm doing this podcast for me, really. In a nice way. I want to help everybody, but I know that it's going to help me. So I think sometimes when you help yourself, you do help others, which is quite nice. So that's the main thing there. But the last 2 weeks, so one of the things I've started, I've made myself cry a bit. So that's me having a drink, which happens a lot during recording, and I normally edit that out. But so what I've been doing is I've had a system for the last few years, and this is all about getting thoughts out of your head. So again, when you're making goals and things that you want to do, you have to have a system to get it out, because if you keep it in your head, you're either going to forget it, or it's just going to get messy inside of you and it will become overwhelming because you'll have all these thoughts. So what I've been doing is there's an app which you can get on the PC, on the Mac, iPhone, Android, everything, and it's called Wunderlist. Wunderlist. And what you can do is it's a really good little like a to-do list, but you can add photos on it. You can have multiple like bullet lists within one to-do list. It's an amazing thing, and I started using it in 2014, I think. And you can have like folders, so I've got like a folder saying things I want to draw. So if I ever see something and I think I really want to draw that, I can just quickly open this app and stick the name of the person or the character or whatever it is into that folder, and then in 20 years, in say a week's time, you sit down and you think, I want to draw something. You can go into that folder and see all the things that you wanted to draw, and you might draw it then. So it's a really good way of capturing things. The problem is, I've captured so much stuff in there that it's become full. It's like I've got I could go all over the place, because like on my PC I have a folder called Stuff, and it's just full of stuff, but there's so much stuff in there that I don't even open it, because like I don't even know where to begin with that. And the same thing has happened with my Wunderlist, where there's so many things, because I've got a folder called website, and it's all these things I want to do on the website, and it must have like about 1,000 entries in it. So it's pretty much become a bit useless because there's just so much stuff in there. And what ended up happening was I ended up not using it because it just got like too full up. So the last week I've been sorting out my Wunderlist, because it is an amazing thing. And on the website I've got there's a section called Inspirational, and I look at inspirational artists. And what I'd done was I had a folder called Inspirational, and I could go in there and I could study an artist's paintings and just write out like keywords and quotes and stuff. And it was a really good way of turning everything. As I was studying the artist, I could capture all this information, and then it was very easy to, on the PC, copy all that data into like a website, into a page. So it was a good little process. But again, I'd stopped using that, and one of the things I want to do for next year is study more artists, because I've been working through the website svslearn.com. So far I've done 3 different courses, and it's absolutely amazing. I was going to make this podcast be about SVS Learn, but I think that's going to be early next year. But I can't wait to talk about that because it's such an amazing website. And they've also got a podcast which is 3-Point Perspective. I'll put links to everything in the show notes. But they talk on there about the importance of studying masters, because it's a way that you can sort of reverse engineer what they've done, and then you can start putting that into your work. And what they say on there, Jake Parker said that, let's say you study 20 artists, and if you can copy what they're doing so it looks like they've done it, what you do then is you put those 20 artists together, and that will in the end become your style. You'll take bits of each one. And I did a podcast a few months ago about the benefits of copying other artists' sketches and stuff. So what I thought was, and this is like a mini aha, I've never done this before, but what I want to do next year is put together more inspirational artists onto the website. But part of the process of doing that is I'm going to look at their artwork, I'm going to pick one of their paintings and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to make that part of the website. So it's almost like I'm doing 2 things at once. I'm going to be studying them, I'm going to be finding new artwork, which is always fun, I'm going to be learning how they've done it, which should hopefully help me, and I'm also going to have like new little sketches and stuff. So I just feel like it'd be a really good thing, and I'll be able to talk about it on the podcast and make videos, so it'll all come together. But it's all going to start by having a little process in Wunderlist which will allow me to capture everything like really quickly, and make it easy to put onto the computer. So I'm doing that at the moment. Another thing on that Wunderlist is I had a folder called Inspirational Artwork, and what I did was every time I saw a photo, a painting, and I thought, I love that, I want to either find more of their artwork, more of the artist's artwork, or I want that to be part of the website, what I would do is I would screen grab that on my iPhone, stick it up into Wunderlist. But I ended up with I think I had 89 images which I had to go through, and again it got so complicated in there that I would stop using it. So what I've done is I've changed that, and I'm now uploading any inspirational artwork directly to Dropbox, which is much easier, and it also means I can look at all the artwork at once, because with Wunderlist everything is inside of folders, so I had to keep clicking on everything to find all the images. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm just looking at all the things I'm doing, all the little processes, and if it's not working, I'm finding a better way to do it, so that next year and moving forward, at the foundation, everything is much easier and more streamlined, so that I can get on with doing the proper thing, which is making things, instead of feeling overwhelmed. So that's really what that's where my mind is at the moment. And I'm also restructuring the menu on the website, because again, I want to simplify everything. At the moment, I feel like it's a bit too complicated, and I feel like if I can simplify everything on the website, it's going to help me produce more stuff, because I've got so many like drawings and stuff I want to put on the website, but I've made it such a complicated thing to do that again I don't do it. So I've made some templates on my computer, which is again going to make that easier. So I'm just making everything as easy as I can, and one of those things has to be the podcast. I have to find a way to make it easier. So that's basically that. Hopefully there's some nuggets of something in there. I was going to talk about loneliness because of this time of year. I think I'm going to put that at the end with the Reiki healing, because it kind of links in with that. So there was something else, is next year I'm going to start doing something else, which is I've picked up a passion planner, which is like a diary, but it's got every day is broken down into hours, and you set yourself goals for the week and goals for the month. So each week you can review what you're doing, and I think it's going to be a way of being able to keep focused on my goals, because again I've been doing that with my little diary, but because this is a journal that's focused on doing that, I feel like it's going to work much better. So that's something else that I'm doing next year. Passion planner. I'll put a link in the show notes. But let's go into this week's little art tip. And the little art tip is all about, it's again to do with svslearn.com. Because what I did was, the first course that I did was How to Draw Anything by Jake Parker. And one of the things he had on there was this little drawing exercises of drawing shapes in 3D, but sketching them out over and over and over again, pages and pages of shapes in 3D, so that you can learn how to draw shapes in 3D. And what I did was, every night before bed, I'd spend 30 minutes to an hour just drawing shapes in 3D. And I've also recently started, what I'll do is I'll write a word, like dream, and then I'll turn that into perspective. So that makes it a bit more fun than just drawing cubes and stuff like that. And it's also a bit harder because you've got weird shapes. So the little art tip is just about finding 30 minutes or something at the end of the day, just before bed. I think that's a good time to do it, where you can just quickly, well, you're not limited, you're not focusing on how long it. See, I probably need to edit that out. Do I? No, I'm not going to edit. So you just find 30 minutes before bed, and well, firstly it relaxes you, so you're going to bed like quite chilled out because drawing is relaxing, but you're also studying and learning, and it's only 30 minutes, but it will all add up. And it's amazing. I've done it for 30 days so far, and when I look at my sketches from the first day, compare them to now, 30 minutes a day, it's not that long, but my lines are improving so much, and the quality of my understanding of perspective has really improved, and that's only 30 minutes a day. And you could do this with anything, so it doesn't even need to be with drawing. It could be like anything. If you want to learn something, 30 minutes, that's all you need. 30 minutes a day, and you will see the benefits at the end of the month. Like, well, it doesn't have to be a month, it could be just a week. But like, I'm going to keep doing this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to evolve it, so probably in about another 30 days I'm going to turn it into, instead of drawing shapes and text, I'm going to start trying to draw like vehicles and little characters from my head in perspective, because the reason you draw the shapes is, if you can draw the shapes in 3D space, you can pretty much draw anything because everything is just made of shapes. So you start simple and work your way up. So what will happen is, in a couple months' time, before bed, I'll be drawing little characters for 30 minutes before bed. And again, hopefully, a couple months doing that, I will see an improvement in my ability to draw characters. So that's this week's little art tip, really. It's just give yourself 30 minutes before bed and focus on practicing something that you want to get good at. And the other thing that's really good about this is, because I'm also trying to learn and improve my ability of lucid dreaming, just hit the mic. Whilst I'm drawing for those 30 minutes, I'm listening to podcasts on YouTube about lucid dreaming and out-of-body stuff. So I'm going to bed, not only am I going to bed chilled because of the drawing, I'm going to bed satisfied because I know I've done some drawing. I'm also sleeping on it. So when you sleep, whatever you've done before bed, you're going to be processing that. So if I'm drawing shapes in 3D space, there's a chance, and I have had dreams where I'm drawing shapes. So I'm going to be even improving my drawing skills whilst I'm sleeping because it's fresh in my mind. But the other thing is, you're going to bed listening to lucid dreaming and stuff. So you're filling your head with ways to lucid dream, which is going to increase your chances of lucid dreaming. So again, it's like what I said earlier about stacking things up to make things easier. That 30 minutes, I'm doing two things at once. I'm practicing lucid dreaming and practicing drawing, and it's only 30 minutes. So that's this week's little art tip. It's just give yourself 30 minutes before bed and do something that is going to make you better. And that's this week's little art tip. Let's get into this week's book. I think this is the first paperback book. And what's really good about this book is I got it from eBay, second hand, and on the front cover somebody has wrote their name and dated it 1977, which is amazing. That means this book is 41 years old, 42 years old. That's unbelievable. 42 years old, and it's still in quite good condition, really. But this book is called Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe, and it's all about really him. It's all about out of body coming to him. He never asked for it. It sort of came into his life. At first he was scared of it, and out of body is where you basically go out of your body. It's like it says on the tin. But the thing about this is, Robert Monroe, actually invented the phrase out of body. So that's why this book is probably quite important. It's the first time anyone in the West, I think, really was talking about this sort of thing. So why that's important is because he didn't have anything to study. He was having these weird out-of-body experiences. At first he was really scared of it. He then started to do experiments, basically, and this book is all about his experiments inside of the out-of-body. And I'm only on chapter 7. I'm probably about a quarter of the way through, and so far he himself doesn't really know. He's trying to work out what the out-of-body experience is, and this is fascinating because you're going through it as well. But he's got a lot of knowledge, and he set up the Monroe Institute, which is probably the biggest thing in the world for out-of-bodiness. So what I love about him is he went into the out-of-body, and instead of I don't know, what I like is he went in there and he did experiments. He's gone in there in it's this spiritual thing, but he's gone in there in a very scientific way, and I've never known anyone to do that, and I don't think anyone did that before him. So he goes in, what I read last night was he went in and he had this experience where he was lying on bed, and he went out body, he felt the vibrations, he then rotated himself. He was now looking at like a black void of nothingness, basically, and he was thinking, what's that? At first he was a bit afraid, so he came back to his body, but the next night he went there again, and he put his hand in, and he felt another hand. So it keeps going like this, and at first he's afraid, but then he starts going into it, and every time he wakes up he's writing what he's learned, and he's putting it all together, and he'll keep repeating things to see if there's consistency. And this is something else I've noticed with lucid dreaming, with especially false awakenings. It seems to have a consistency which it makes you feel like you're going into another reality, and he's basically coming away with the same thing, that this out-of-bodiness, you are going into some other sort of other reality, and it's just fascinating to see where his mind goes, and I can't wait to see like what he ends up finding out. And it also helps you because he's writing it after, he's also dropping in little tips and stuff of how to do things. So I'm going to keep reading this book, and I'm going to talk about it in the future episodes. But so far, I'm really enjoying it, but it is actually not like I thought it was going to be. I didn't know much about it, but I kept hearing people talking about this book, so I picked it up, and at first, I wasn't sure if I liked it. But it's just grown on me the more I've got into it, because I like the way he talks and stuff, and some of his experiences are so amazing, really. I just wish, I really wish he was still in the physical world, because he has died now, but I wish he was still around now, because he could do videos and stuff. He didn't do many videos and stuff like that, and I just feel like I would love to see more of what was inside of his head, because I just feel like he knew so much. And so that's basically it, really. I'm really enjoying this book. It's Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe, and I'll keep coming back to it. It'll probably be maybe a couple episodes time or something. But yes, I definitely recommend that book. And that's this week's book. There's the other thing I was going to talk about is loneliness, especially around this time of year. I think what I'll do is I'll talk about the last Reiki healing session that I had, because what happened is, this is the third one, and the first one I spoke about on the podcast before, and when she did the Reiki, which is, what she does is, for like an hour you lie on the bed, and the Reiki healer, she moves her hand around different parts of your body, which I believe are to do with the chakras. And what she does is, every point she goes to, she puts her energy into there. I don't really know how it works, but I know that it does work, because I felt so many amazing things. And this last one, when I opened up to her before the session, because I've been struggling for the last couple of weeks, and I feel like it is to do with loneliness and Christmas and stuff. So I opened up to her, and during the session I was having lots of, it just felt like every time because what happens is she'll put her hands on, say, your arms, and then she'll move her arms, but every time she went to move her arms, I kept getting hit with this feeling of like, oh, please don't move. I was in such a really blissful place. I wanted to stay there forever. I didn't want her to move, and I kept feeling that. And then right at the very end, she put her hands on my feet, and what started happening was I started feeling the vibrations, which are very similar to the out-of-body vibrations that I felt. And at first I was thinking, is she doing that? Is she like vibrating my legs? And then I soon realised that she wasn't, and because I also knew that the feet are the last part. Like after the feet, the session's over, and I was thinking, I want to stay here. I want to see what's going to happen. And then what happened was, like, really vivid, and I mean so vivid. It was as if it was in front of me. this little tiny bird flew across from the left to the right, just a little tiny bird, and I was still having the vibrations, and then she took her feet away, and I was just lying there thinking, like, what just happened? And I feel like it's something to do with, well, it's got to be something, it's the same realm as like out body and stuff. But later on, after the session, we sat down, we were talking, and I said to her, right at the very end, this little bird flew like into my vision, like crystal clear, and she said that's quite amazing because she uses birds. So when she's doing the healing, she uses birds like as a way of getting the energy. So I didn't know that, and I just thought that was really cool because it to me, it proves that there was something there, and I kept having these feelings of like a deep connection with her. And she said during the session she sometimes gets this thing where she can't tell where her hand ends and the person's body begins. It's almost like she said it's almost like she melts into her body. And the thing is, I think it was 2013, I had a meditation where that happened, where it felt like my arms had melted into my body. So there's something going on there where, I don't know, but there's something going on, and it was just amazing. And then that night, I had a load of dreams about these little birds flying onto my hand. So, but to me, there is definitely something going on with Reiki healing, and it's probably one of my most favourite things to do now. And that goes into loneliness, because I think this time of year is rife. Do you know what, I want to talk about loneliness, but I don't know whether I should, because I feel like it should be its own podcast, and it's such a deep topic. Okay, I'll talk about it a little bit. So what happened was, last night, I found out that a member of my family committed suicide, and I know that a few years ago I was at a place where I was as close as I feel I could possibly be to committing suicide without actually doing it. And the only thing that got me through that, and a large part of that, was loneliness, because especially being transgender, you do feel like an outsider a lot. So I feel like a lot of transgender people, when I went to the support group, a lot of them did suffer from like loneliness and stuff. But what happened was, I feel like the most important thing, the only thing that got me through that like year of suicidalness, one was drawing, and the other thing, which I think is probably the main thing, was talking about it. And I think if you talk about it, like I said earlier, when you talk about things, it just makes it different. And the person that I was talking to was my therapist, my gender therapist, and she was and is the most important person in my life. Without her, I would not be here. I know that. So what I think is, if you are suffering with loneliness, and it's definitely a thing at this time of year, you have to talk about it. You have to talk about it to somebody. Just even if you're talking to a random person on the street, just talk to somebody about it, and somehow, I don't know how, but somehow it helps. But what I wanted to say was this one thing that happened during that, which changed everything for me. And what happened was, there's this one night I woke up like feeling just incredibly suicidal. So I actually went to Saltram, which is like the place, like the woods nearby. It was the middle of the night. I got out of bed. I just rode my bike over to Saltram. And what happened was, I got onto this little path, and there was a street light up above the path, but there was nobody around because it's in the middle of nowhere, really. And I just lied on the path, and the street light was lighting the path, but it was very light, and book, light. But I was just lying on this path, crying my eyes out, and what happened was I was creating this little puddle in front of me, and I could sort of see this puddle. It's like a puddle from my tears, and this night changed everything. It somehow put everything into perspective, because I felt like, I guess my thoughts had got the better of me, and I felt like whatever it was I was suicidal over, and it was probably because at that time I was struggling with trying to present myself as Sophie, so it was probably just feeling like it was impossible. And I was lying on this pavement, I was watching this puddle get bigger from my tears, and then I started seeing a load of little ants walking back and forth across this path, and I started thinking, I don't even know what happened, but those little ants, it just put everything into perspective, and I almost feel like maybe I was meditating on those ants or something. But I started thinking about how maybe the reason I'm here right now is to cry on this pavement, to create this little puddle of my tears, and maybe those ants are going to feed off that puddle, which will keep them alive. And if I hadn't been there, those ants would have died, and maybe those ants staying alive is like one of the most important things for the universe or something. And that sounds silly, but it was just, I felt a connection for the first time in that moment, and that's what I was missing, and that's probably what my suicidalness was about. It was a lack of connection. So by going out and just being with nature, really, I connected. So that's another thing. There's another way to deal with loneliness is to go into nature and connect with nature, and you realise that you're never actually alone. You're only lonely if you allow your thoughts to say you're lonely, because you're never alone. I think I felt that day. But it's definitely important to talk to people, and especially at this time of year, because I've had a couple of weeks of feeling quite bad, really, but at the same time I've got this balance of feeling bad, but also somehow it's not got the better of me. I've been able to keep my thoughts, because I know that I'm in control of my thoughts. It's a really complicated thing, this. It's not easy at all. But my advice is, if you're suffering with loneliness, talk to somebody. And if you think you haven't got anyone to talk to, you have, because you can just talk to anyone. Just go outside and talk to somebody. You can talk to me if you want. So that's basically it, really. Go talk to somebody and be with nature, because nature seems to heal everything. Yep, and that's really this week's podcast, I think. You can find show notes and stuff at sophielawson.com, and I just want to wish you a happy Christmas, and I hope 2019 is amazing, and I hope you enjoy these podcasts, and I'm going to find a way to get the balance between doing these podcasts and everything else. I will find a way, and hopefully I can stop editing them so much, which will free up a lot of time, which will be nice. So happy 2019 and happy Christmas, and I'll see you next year for episode 42 of the So Free Art podcast. And all that's left is this week's inspirational quote, and this one goes to somebody called LAMA MARUT, who is a monk, and he is the first inspirational person that I ever started listening to. In 2013, I only ever used to listen to video game podcasts, because this was before I was drawing. Well, this was just as I started drawing, but I didn't realise that I wanted to really pursue drawing. So at that time it was just a little fun thing I was doing, but I was mostly playing video games. So all my podcasts were about video games. And then I just thought, why don't I start listening to other things? Like, I was also, because that was at the same time when I was starting to realise that I was going to have to go after this transition and stuff. And I knew how hard it was going to be. So I was searching about how to have happiness, really. And he had a load of podcasts about happiness. So I started listening to them, and I really liked LAMA MARUT, the way he talks and stuff. He is so different to all the other monks, and I haven't listened to him for a couple of years, really, because I feel like sometimes people come into your life and they're the perfect person for that moment, but when you evolve, you need somebody different with a different mindset and stuff. So when I first started, he was perfect, but now I feel like I get more benefits from different other people. But he is definitely amazing, and one of the quotes he had, which I've never forgotten, it's one of my most important quotes, and it is, "It's like this now." And what that means is, whatever is happening, it's like this now. So if you are, let's just say you are suicidal, if you can somehow, just for a brief second, get your head out of that place where you're feeling negative, if you can just say, "It's like this now," it puts it into context. A bit like those ants. It makes you realise that whatever you are thinking is not real. Like, whatever that negative thing is, it's not real. And these ants, they're just like going about their business, because they probably realise that it's not important. It isn't important. It's just, I think we need to be like the ants. Just enjoy yourself. But like, whatever is happening, it's like this now. So if you are super happy and like you're having the best day of your life, it's like this now. If it's a really boring day, and which I don't think I've never understood people who say they're bored, because like there's so much to do. I don't see how anyone could be bored. But let's just say you was bored, you can say, "It's like this now." So in other words, whatever is happening, it's like this now. It's the ultimate way to find acceptance. And if you are transitioning, I feel like that is one of the keys to being able to transition, is accepting that it's like this now. So if somebody throws abuse at you, it's like this now. It takes you out of the moment, and it just helps. So this week's inspirational quote goes to LAMA MARUT, and it is, "It's like this now." LAMA MARUT. You're only lonely if you allow your thoughts to say you're lonely, because you're never alone.